Hello everyone, good morning, and welcome back to the channel. Today's review is going to be on the 9th studio album from Florida metalcore band Trivium titled What the Dead Men Say. Trivium has always been a band that I was familiar with, knew a couple songs by, liked a couple songs by, but never really been a fan of. As someone who got into heavier music through metalcore, I do admit that I owe a lot of my taste in music to bands like Trivium, except I eventually mostly outgrew my metalcore phase and only took a few favorites with me, as a lot of people do. I went into this with fairly high hopes, which might sound like a little bit of a backward statement considering the fact that I just said that I wasn't really a big fan of metalcore anymore. But Trivium isn't really the most derivative band out there. They've tried a lot of new and different things, and I kind of really hate putting them in that box. So I wouldn't say that Trivium is in no way capable of making something really stand out, and that's what I was hoping for here. The opening cut on here, 9, clearly being titled because it's the 9th album, is a very promising cut. This is really a metal intro done right. It provides a very ominous and foreboding atmosphere and has a really solid build-up and transition into the next song, the title track. At this point, the listener might notice that this is a very tight and solid set of only 10 tracks. Usually when I see that sort of thing, especially on a metal album, I get kind of excited because that means that every song is probably going to be really well crafted, really well put together, and it's not going to be long enough to bore me or become stale by the end of it. And then you look at the 45-minute runtime and realize that your previous thought was a huge mistake. I knew when looking at this that listening to this multiple times might become a little bit of a struggle because the genre that Trivium is cut from, their general style, doesn't really have a lot that can interest me through 6-minute songs. Not even really a lot that can interest me through 4.5-minute songs. So the longer cuts on here really don't cut it for me. Right away on the first real song on the album, track number 2, What the Dead Men Say, you really have a solid feel for what this album is going to have to offer. This title track is a pretty solid metalcore tune with very little to critique about it, but also very little to give it a lot of props for. Solid chorus and playing throughout. There's a pretty cool little guitar bit that breaks up the monotony, but that's really about it. Unfortunately, the lyricism, especially here and through much of the album, is my biggest point of contentment. This title track does have a lot of words in it. The problem is that a lot of them are the same words repeated over and over again. And all of this stuff you can interpret a variety of ways, but I'm pretty far from calling it genius. You can say what the dead men say 100 times, except I'm still not gonna know what the dead men say just from you saying those literal 5 words. I'm gonna make a bit of a comparison here and follow me on this one. The lyric writing on this is a little bit like a horoscope. It's just vague enough for you to be able to apply it to your own life, but it's not exactly artistically stunning. Many people really like horoscopes. In fact, there's probably somebody who likes horoscopes in Trivium who's gonna rip me to shreds in the comments section. And I don't blame people who like horoscopes. I see the appeal. I see where it could become a fun thing. It's just that neither one of them I really hold in high artistic regard, and I don't really return to very often. Everything I said about the title track can really be said about the second real song on here, Catastrophist. Again, it's a pretty solid instrumental that doesn't really offer a whole lot new to the metalcore genre. I do like this one a little bit better though because it's played more epically, if you will. But the lyricism on here really holds it back again and does even less to justify its even longer runtime. The lyricism here really boils down to, I don't like you, person, but it tries to be very above that. If you have to invent a new insult and frame a song around it, I would at least like it to be somewhat clever. He literally says, "You're a catastrophe," and then says catastrophist. Some dedication to this somewhat corny, albeit, idea would have been well appreciated. Next song, Amongst the Shadows and the Stones, has some really sick imagery, but that's really about all it has. There's not a whole lot of backing message on this track. And the fourth track on here is really the flatline point, as this song just doesn't really do a lot besides sift into becoming background noise. And I think that that's all this album is really going to become, especially at this point, unless you're really intently listening as I was on my few first listens. Upon repeated listens though, a lot of what happens after here has become background noise and really just does very little in the way of grabbing my attention. Much of the lyricism is very simple and not very nuanced at all. Bleed Into Me is about being an outcast. Defiant is about being, well, you guessed it, defiant. It's a rebellion song. So on and so forth. Most things featured lyrically on here are not very nuanced, as I said, and are pretty obvious. However, with my somewhat damning gripes in the open air, I would like to point out some more congratulatory statements on this album that I noticed while listening to it a few more times. Everyone in the band plays really well. Everything is mixed well. Everything is played well. There's not really moments where I'm blown away at the technical skill or anything like that. It's just that solid instrumentation to back every one of the songs is present and everything is well produced. Speaking of the instrumentation, guitar solos are a thing that are always welcomed to extend the track, in my opinion. Another repetition of the chorus isn't necessarily always welcome, but having something interesting to switch up the flow of the song, like a guitar solo, does make me more interested. Slight instrumental gripe, I think it could have used a lot more bass all throughout, but that's just a small thing. Something I noticed, something I picked up on that might not be a problem for anybody else. Second, I would like to point out that not all of the lyrics are bad on here. Tracks 7 through 10, these last 4 tracks, do focus a lot more cohesively. Sickness Unto You is the greatest example of what I'm talking about here, as this portion of the album seems to be about the loss of a loved one. I'm not sure what this is all based on or if it's a true story, but what I'm picking up here is somewhat passionately written. It's easily the best structured portion of the album, as it does carry some lyrical things from track to track on this portion of the album, and it does have a lot of emotional appeal. Also, I do know that I griped on it a little bit already, but Bleed Into Me is a pretty nice song for what it is. The hook on this track is just really solid, something that you can sing along with, and I can imagine this song being really fun at concerts, if concerts ever happen again. And it is all aided by Matt Heafy's vocals, which are very nicely done. He does sound a little bit too much along the lines of Motionless in White, Breaking Benjamin sometimes, but I do appreciate his skill and proficiency in the area that he's in nonetheless. All around, I don't really think that there's a lot to say negatively about this Trivium album, but once again, there's not a lot I can really give it props for either. I can understand that it's really hard to balance out the elitists, especially in genres like this, and I can't say whether or not that's why this album sounds somewhat derivative, but nonetheless, I think that innovation is really the only way to go and the only thing that's going to keep me interested in this kind of music. All around, I'm feeling about a 6- out of 10 on this. Let me know what you thought of this album down in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Leave a like if you liked what you saw today, and hit that subscribe button if you want to know when I upload more videos just like this one. And sorry if I sound a bit congested. Allergies are a bitch right now. But that's just about going to wrap it up for this one, and I will see you in the next video.